All right. Yeah, apologies. My voice sounds a bit off today. Just been a bit under the weather, but we are moving through. We have Coreum Labs up here as a speaker. Just waiting for Artem, developer relations engineer with Coreum, to get up here. There's his request. Awesome. All right. Well, we can kick things off now that we're all up here. We should also have Nico from Interchain, the Interchain Foundation, joining us up here as well. We'll just give him one moment and see if he can jump in.
Awesome. Can you hear me, guys?
Loud and clear on my end, yes. Hey, Helwan.
Awesome. How are you, Niles?
Doing okay. It was a long week last week at Ethereum Denver, but lots of hands shaken. It was a great week overall. How are you doing?
Nice. Yeah, it really was pretty cool. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing fantastic. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Hey, Helwan. Hey, Niles.
Hey, Artem. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good.
Awesome.
Yeah, great to have you here with us, Artem. Yeah, we'll just give a couple more moments, see if we can get Nico on here. 1 moment.
Hey to everyone listening. I see a lot of familiar faces. I mean, profile pics. Yeah, it's going to be a good space.
Oh, I just pinged him in the chat, and yeah, I suppose I can gently kick things off here, and I imagine he will trickle in. So yeah, welcome to today's AMA on Coreum's native order book DEX, which as of about 2 weeks ago is now live on DevNet and joins a select few chains to successfully implement a native order book DEX. I don't mean to toot our own horn right off the bat here, but congrats to the engineering team on this big milestone. And if I'm not mistaken, it's really the only order book based DEX currently built on the Cosmos SDK. So yeah, hats off to the team. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today as well. As an initial open invitation to the audience, feel free to share this space with a retweet or in your Telegram or Discord groups. And then also just as a note to remember that anything myself or any of our guest speakers today say is not to be considered financial advice. And yeah, we can roll right into it. So today I'm joined with a few guest speakers to talk about more of the technical aspects of the DEX, as well as its relevance to the broader Cosmos ecosystem. Firstly, we have Artem, Coreum's developer relations engineer. Artem, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you've been with the team 4 years now. Yeah, how are you doing today?
Yeah, doing great. Yes, actually been with the team for 4 years. Started with the Sologenic project and then been with Coreum since day one. I started as a DevOps engineer and recently I've changed my position to a DevRel manager. So yeah, really excited for what we're building and for this recent release on DevNet.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, so we also, many of you know Helwan from Coreum Labs, and as also many of you are familiar with, he used to be a member of the Coreum team, but is now building on Coreum with his own venture, Coreum Labs. Helwan, how are you doing today?
Yes, I mean, I'm doing good, man. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. As you mentioned, I used to work with you guys at the core team, and I just went and create Coreum Labs, which is a company that build decentralized application on the Coreum network, and not only because we aim to go cross chain, and yeah, build on the Interchain.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for all your work. So lots of topics and details to get into today. Perhaps unfortunately we don't have Nico here, but yeah, we'll definitely keep the floor open. And if he does trickle in, we'll definitely give him a welcome. So yeah, perhaps to kick things off, Helwan, maybe you could take us through a couple of the ways in which you at Coreum Labs plan to leverage the DEX. Perhaps giving us just an overall sense of some of the use cases here.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we can start with what's the difference in between an AMA, an automated market maker, and a order book type of DEX. I think that will be interesting, and that will lead us to why did we end up having an order book on Coreum at the protocol level. So yeah, I mean, I think everyone in the audience know what have used an AMM, so an automated market maker. If you haven't, is a way for you to exchange an asset for another one in a completely decentralized manner without a third party, which are market makers, right? So that's where the terms automated market maker come from. So those things are very good. They are very computationally efficient, meaning you don't need a lot of resource to running. So they resource efficient on that part, but at the same time they are inefficient in terms of capital, right? I think everyone have experienced something that we call slippage, that is induced by low liquidity, meaning that whenever you are placing a trade on an AMM that most of the time follow a constant product. So K equal XY, with XY being the assets sitting in the pool. So most of the time it's a binary pool, right? Let's say Osmo Coreum, for example. And if there is not enough liquidity, then you experience slippage, right? Which is not good. And how do we add liquidity to the pool? It's either with liquidity providers, so people adding liquidity themselves, or you need a centralized party to add that to kickstart liquidity for the pool to be interesting enough for people to start to trade. So that being said, those are AMMs. It work well in a decentralized environment, and on the more, let's say, classic way to exchange assets, you have order books, right, which have been used for a long time on Wall Street and any centralized exchange, Binance, KuCoin, Get.io, you name it, right, where you have someone trying to sell an asset, and for this person to be able to sell, you need to have a counterparty. And most of the time, these counterparty are what we call market makers. So what is nice with this approach is that it's very capital efficient. There is very low slippage. No slippage at all. The only thing that is perceived by the end user is what we call the spread, which is the difference between the selling price and the buying price, or the opposite, right? This is how market makers make money most of the time. And yeah, so those are the difference between the two. And we initially you use not to see order book on blockchain because it's not really computationally efficient. And what the core team did with that that decentralized exchange order book style is build that order book on chain at the protocol level. So I think Artem is is going to be able to explain in a better way on how it was built and why did we build that at the protocol level instead of on a smart contract, let's say.
Yeah, basically, our goal is to be a go-to chain for RWA tokenization. So that decision was made in order to mimic traditional financial markets and therefore make it also easier to comply with regulations when it comes to trading RWAs. So that's part of the reason. Also, there are other upsides like there are no trading fees as opposed to AMMs because the only fees you pay is to create a transaction, to put an order in. Yeah, and those kind of are biggest upsides, and also with the fact that we have our smart tokens and extensions that allow to also add some custom logic as like trading hours and all of the other stuff that you might need. With that being said, also our DEX is completely permissionless. So as opposed to AMMs where you have to create pools for certain assets, for our implementation, anything can be traded against anything. Yeah, so those are some of the points to mention. And yeah, I would be curious to hear on which direction you, Helwan, going to take our DEX with Coreum Labs. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, I think what is interesting with an order book type of DEX, and especially for Coreum Labs, is that it enables us to build more use case that we're not able to do with automated market makers. One of them is, I think, some of you have noticed Corecast, which is a prediction market that we will be building on the Coreum blockchain, and that will be leveraging that order book. What is interesting is that with AMMs, as I mentioned, it's very good to kickstart liquidity, but it's not efficient when you want to scale and have more market makers to be able to join the market and provide liquidity. So one way for us that we plan to use the DEX is through Corecast, which is a decentralized, permissionless prediction market.
nice. And another point to mention as well is that our implementation also allows for some advanced order types like good till cancel, immediate or cancel, fill, kill, which I think is not common with the AMMs.
Yeah, one other piece related to orders coming from the GitHub on the DEX specification, which is that there's a feature, or basically there's an order reserve such that each order placed on the chain has a 10 core reserve. And I would imagine that there's a similar functionality to the XRP ledger in serving a purpose of preventing spam. I believe there's also some parameters or that specific reserve amount is adjustable via governance. And then there's also currently by default a 100 limit, a 100 order limit placed per account, and that is also adjustable by governance. So to me, that would also just highlight the importance of network participation, staking your Coreum tokens, and then voting on governance proposals. Let's see, Artem, I have a relatively basic question for you. Maybe you can clarify for us, what does it mean that the DEX is now live on specifically DevNet? And how is this different from, being live on testnet or mainnet?
Yeah, so our development cycle goes from DevNet environment over to testnet environment, which testnet and mainnet, they are normally, the next succession of testnet would be the mainnet. So testnet and mainnet environment, they are not that different usually, whereas devnet environment is more so for development. So whenever we have a version that we can extensively test, that's when it's deployed on the devnet and later on promoted to the other environments. So the reason why we have announced this deployment already is that we want to give the community a head start so that they can start building on top of this new exciting functionality and be ready for the main release with a or first of all testnet when it's going to be out, then they can test their products more extensively and also be ready for the mainnet release. So whenever we have that upgrade that contains the DEX, all of the products can be also ready to accept the users.
Got it. Thank you for that, Artem. We did get Nico from Interchain Labs here. Great to have you, Nico. Nico is now stewarding, Interchain Labs is now stewarding the Cosmos SDK. Pleasure to have you up here. How are you doing today, Nico?
I'm doing wonderful. Hopefully I come out loud and clear. Jumped in a little bit later than usual. Couldn't find the live. Happy to be representing the ISO team as well from Interchain Labs. You know us from the Cosmos ecosystem. Wide as it is, we steward the SDK, the inter-blockchain communication protocol, Comet, and all the other primitives chains are built on these days. Super happy to be here.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, you guys, just to maybe riff off of one point, Nico, you guys recently shared some interesting new information on IBC Eureka. And we actually had the pleasure of listening to the direct presentation last week at the Dora Hacks event at ETH Denver. I wanted to know, what does the implementation of IBC Eureka look like for a chain like Coreum? And then perhaps what new advantages could it bring to the DEX or to the chain overall?
Yeah, 100%. First of all, it was such a pleasure to meet the team there. For anybody that missed those presentations, they should be live soon. It was a nice gathering of Cosmos projects, Inisha, Circle, just meeting to speak a little bit on multi-chain. And yeah, after a couple of days in Denver, busy as is, we came back to share a little bit more on IBCV2 and Eureka. For everybody that's new here, IBCV2 is the next iteration of what we call the inter-blockchain communication protocol. It's the new design or schema for the protocol, which is heavily simplified. So to make it very simple, I'd say P2, what makes possible is actually integrating IBC in non-Cosmos chains way more easily. That means that now this year we'll start to see native integrations of IBC or connections deployed on Ethereum, Solana, and other non-Cosmos chains. IBC is this wonderful interoperability protocol for both messaging assets and other primitives that was born here, but maybe in design was ahead. So for those chains that were already set, it's a hard challenge to start to adopt it. Now it's not the case anymore with P2. And the Eureka is an implementation of IBC V2 on top of the Cosmos Hub, Skipco, and other things, sort of providing a bridging or aggregated routing service where instead of having to run point-to-point connections everywhere, assuming the Cosmos Hub has the most connections and will continue to be the case, it will enable people to connect to the Cosmos Hub and then access all IBC V2 connections, including Ethereum to start and then beyond, as well as the hundreds of Cosmos chains already connected. For a DEX like Coreum, this means like constant expansion of the exposure you get to new assets from these ecosystems, and as well a chance to actually export your services natively to other places without worrying too much about performance, cost. Like our idea is that now you can start thinking of like, oh, where do I build my app, my project, my service? Just make the best choice in tech and then assume maximum interoperability with something like Eureka, meaning you can get liquidity from everywhere onto your DEX, or you can offer your DEX services to any kind of project, asset, or user. So super expansive. we're really happy to have this go live soon, and super excited to see what Coreum can or how Coreum can expand with it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Nico. I appreciate all that information and insight. Speaking of services, maybe Artem, you could expand a bit more on specifically the DEX API and what that enables for developers potentially looking to boot up a DEX from scratch and then utilize the API and the DEX as a service.
Sure, but before we go there, I just wanted to say that it's very exciting what IBC V2 is going to bring to the table, especially with us being already connected with XRPL ledger as well. That just seems like we're finally going to reach that point where all of the blockchain will be interoperable and everybody will be connected. So that's great. Yeah, I mean, so far we have talked about the native DEX implementation, but we decided not to stop there, and we decided to also provide the developers with some tool that they can use easily and develop their own use cases on our DEX. So basically, we created a stack that you can run yourself, either locally or in a production environment. And that one will include all of the components you need for a RESTful API that can be integrated with any front end of your choice. With that being said, in this repository, we also have a proof of concept front end that you can check and base your project on top of that. Yeah, so just more sort of information about this RESTful API. It's going to include some historical data, OHLC data, yeah, and stuff like that. So I encourage you to check out this repository, try to run it yourself. It includes a couple applications. There is an application that aggregates the data, scans the blockchain for new transactions related to DEX. There's an API server that exposes these endpoints to the front end, and there is a front end application itself that you can also run and check out. Yeah. With that being said, I wanted to ask Helwan if you already did some hands-on with this project, since we announced it 2 weeks ago, like you said, Niles. Alongside with the native DEX module, we also announced this developer centered project just to give some boilerplate for developers that they can build on top. So Helwan, if you could share your experience, whether you have already tried this project, that would be great.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's good that you guys put that out, because it's always that things where you have a really cool infrastructure at the protocol level, but it's always hard, or not hard, but you have to figure out your way around it, how to interact with it, build a UI, make sure that your backend interact with it in a seamless way. And what you guys did with that, I think you called it the friendly DEX, which is an example on how to interact with the DEX and that UI. It's really amazing. I did try to run it with Docker. So for those who don't know, Docker is a container system that allows you to run an application with one command. So what the Coreum team did is bootstrap everything into those Docker containers that you can run with one command, and you have this application live and up and running. So yeah, I did try it. It works pretty well, and I was able to place transaction on the DevNet in minutes, instead of having to figure out how to interact with it myself directly.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, so I'd encourage everybody else who's building in the space to also check it out yourself. And yeah, also please join our Discord server. I'm hanging there every single day. So in case you're going to have any questions related to DEX, even after this AMA or any technical questions that need assistance, I'll be happy to answer them.
Actually, Nico, I have a question for you as the IBC expert and the cross-chain expert. Do you think that are the book DEX are more suitable for the liquidity to flow from one chain to another because there is less of that thing of you having to add liquidity to a pool, and sometimes we know that there is a locking period, right, for you to unbond your tokens and everything. So yeah, I'm curious to hear your thought about that.
Yeah. To circle back on a point real quick that I missed from the first questions, what would it get to integrate IBCV2? If you have IBCV1 integrated, that's all it takes. Once it's live, it's all good. And then the question you are asking right now is mostly, will this evolution, let's say, of interoperability just solve that base fragmentation issue, right? And that's our take. If we have a situation where, for example, the hub concentrates a lot of connections, then we can start thinking that liquidity will either flow through there in a more concentrated manner. And if that's the case, we can start thinking, what can people do with that liquidity, and how can services like Coreum, for example, build on top of that liquidity and those liquidity pools, instead of having to generate net new liquidity points, right? And then fragmenting. It's something that it's one of the key problems, actually, I think, of the multi-chain experience, is how liquidity fragments itself naturally. And what we want to avoid is this.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
Constant redeployment sort of phase that we were going through, where you see, Aave deploying the same service everywhere, fragmented liquidity everywhere, instead of finding a concentrated liquidity source and then just offering its service against that. Hopefully, yes, we want to address that with this.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Nico. To kind of ping off of like liquidity and perhaps like IBC swaps. I know it was a few months ago, but I also wanted to just say congratulations on adding Skip Protocol as one of the new main subsidiary of the Interchain Foundation. And I'm curious, once the Coreum DEX is live on mainnet, will a protocol like Skip be able to leverage the order book for liquidity routing or facilitating swaps? Would that be how that works?
Could you repeat the last part again for me? Just kind of broke off.
Yeah, just curious, like once the Coreum DEX is live on the mainnet, will a protocol like Skip be able to leverage the order book for liquidity routing or perhaps facilitating swaps, etc.?
Yeah, we could explore that without a doubt. I think like right now, what we need to usually understand is like, where do people want to go to and what assets they want to exchange. And let's say Coreum's order book has the best tool offer for that, then it could be a possibility to make that happen, right? Will be very interesting to see how Skip Go as a product itself evolves, right? As routes expand on IBC. And now mostly, we had entry points of you could use any asset from any external chain, let's say like Ethereum, but in the end, you would enter an ecosystem like Cosmos with different asset, or swap to USDC and then swap to another asset in Cosmos. Now we'll start seeing swaps increase to so many assets and denominations. That's going to be very interesting to see the systems forming around it to provide the liquidity and orders for it.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that. Let's see, Helwan, let's see. I was wondering if you might be able to elaborate a bit more detail on, like, for example, what custom behavior might be able to be embedded into a smart token extension with the DEX, and perhaps share a specific use case that this might allow for on the DEX.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion lately on smart token extension and the different use cases that they enable. And I think that's a good question, because the same paradigm shift that we have by having smart tokens, so assets that live at the protocol level, we have with the same thing with having the DEX, an order book DEX at the protocol level. So by having this full life cycle happening directly on the layer one without having to pass through a smart contract, you, as you said, enable more use cases, and you also have more controllability. Let's say you have your smart token that implement a certain extension, or even without an extension, right? Because for an extension, you will have to go through a smart contract. But let's say something pretty basic, such as whitelisting, or to implement, for example, on-chain KYC. Something that you might want to do is make sure that only a certain type of customers can trade on those assets. And to do that, you will simply have to enforce it at the protocol level with the DEX. So you will not have to, for example, make sure that you restrict access to all of the different AMAs, all of the different DEX. You could just say, okay, this smart token is not able to go through any smart contract and is only going to be able to be exchanged on the order book. So like this, you restrict access and you have better control of the full life cycle of your token, and who can use it, who can trade on it, and so on. So yeah, one of the use cases is everything that touch tokenization, that touch RWA, or any type of asset that needs some regulation around it and that needs to be exchanged in a decentralized manner, but in a permission manner as well. So that is one of the use cases. I mean, that's many use cases, but it's this kind of things that I see pretty useful.
Nice. Yeah, I certainly think implementation of either KYC or AML at the protocol level is a great foundational way to approach compliance. Obviously, with regulations and compliance laws, we have things like the Security Act of 1933, KYC and AML with FinCEN in the U.S., and MiCA in the EU, etc. So yeah, lots to navigate and comply with, but absolutely the tools to do so. To take a slight pivot into direction, Artem, I'm curious, just as a question, what direct interaction, if any, might there be between the Coreum DEX and the Coreum XRPL bridge?
Like I said before, that our order book based DEX is permissionless. So meaning if you bridge tokens from XRP to Coreum, then automatically you will be able to trade them on the DEX. So maybe this opens some opportunity for cross-chain trading and stuff. So that's one of the possibilities.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you. Let's see. We can perhaps move into a couple of questions that were submitted underneath the AMA post. Let's see. The first one up was that Average John had shared a suggestion to have a public testnet WebSocket for those that just want to boot up a DEX. Artem, I believe you have a specific answer for this one as well.
I already sort of answered that. So for now, the DEX is only available on DevNet. And we have public nodes for DevNet that you can use in order to interact with the DEX. But I encourage you to go to the Core DEX API, where you can, put just a couple of commands. You can spin up the whole stack and you can start interacting with DEX. So that makes it, a lot easier. So you don't have to worry about the public WebSocket. Everything is already pre-configured there, and you can just start building.
Awesome. Also, Bob Doe had asked about stablecoins on the DEX. Do you, either Helwan or Artem, have a specific idea of what stablecoins may be able to be supported? I imagine obviously any IBC or XRPL stablecoin would be able to be added here. Perhaps maybe the question is like, are there any limitations to any specific stablecoins that would be able to be traded on the DEX?
Yeah, so go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I was just going to say like any type of asset that you can trade on in AMA, you can do it on the DEX. So I don't think there is any limitation when it's come to trading stablecoin on the order book DEX. I even think that it's better because you have less slippage, right? So you're really gonna be able to, let's say you want to trade one USDC for one USDC, you're gonna be able to get 1-to-1, which is not the case when you trade stable on an automated market maker.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for that. Let's see. We also had Defiant Pathfinder ask, what about having a lending platform on Coreum? And then, yeah, maybe Helwan, you can share some insight, maybe specifically on how the DEX may or may not be leveraged for a borrowing lending platform on Coreum.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm not an expert in lending and borrowing. Not sure what will be the synergy between a lending and borrowing protocol and an order book type of DEX. Maybe something that I can think on top of my head is, let's say someone you can actually borrow directly by closing a limit order on the order book. So I can see some synergy, but I think at the end of the day, those are two different protocols. They serve two different use cases. So I'm sure we can think about something, but on top of my head, I think it's two different things. So lending and borrowing on Coreum, I think if that happened, that's gonna be at the smart contract level, the same thing that you see on different chains. So yeah, because at the end of the day, it's the same thing that's happening with AMA, right? It's something that you're able to do at the protocol level. You don't need to at the smart control level. You don't need to have lending and borrowing being built as a custom module on the chain.
Got it. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Let's see. Also wanted to open the floor as well. If somebody in the audience wants to come up and ask a specific question, feel free to send a request and I can bump you up here. And then while we wait for potentially some guest speakers to come up, Artem, I would also like to ask you if it's possible to articulate simply enough. Also, I know that you recently recorded a workshop showing, step by step how to implement the API, which is awesome. So be on the lookout for that in the near future. But yeah, wondering if you could perhaps, if you're able, walk us through like a high level overview of what the workflow looks like for implementing and setting up the DEX API.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty simple. We have already sort of gone over it. We have prepared 3 different ways on how you can boot up the Coreum DEX API. The first one is just local, so there is a set of bash scripts that you can run, and the whole stack will be running on your local machine, and then you can go ahead and develop your front end and your use case. The second method is a Docker Compose. So we have prepared a Docker Compose file as well that basically deploys the whole stack in Docker. Yeah, just like with one command, it's very simple. And then the third method will be more of a production environment. So there is a set of YAML files that you can use to deploy on a Kubernetes cluster. So basically, with this project, we are just trying to get developers covered with all of the necessary stuff so that they can focus on implementing their use cases.
Very nice. Thank you for that, Artem. We now have Chris from Coreum Concepts here, beloved member of the Coreum community, innovator in the Interchain ecosystem, content creator. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, happy to hear any comments or questions that you might have to share.
Wow, thanks for the nice intro. Thanks for having me up. Great space here today. What I wanted to ask, I know you described the central limit order book and how it works very well, and I understand that, and that's awesome. What I'm wondering, I guess, is if there isn't an order there, is there, and forgive me for lack of proper terminology, but just to refer to the XRP ledger, what we're familiar with, is there somewhat of a pathfinding where it might seek a AMM like on Pulsera or aggregated liquidity that's available elsewhere to complete that order, or is it strictly the order book?
That's a great question. From my understanding, it will look in that specific order book, but I might have to get back to you on that and get some clarification. But that's a great question.
Awesome, yeah. And if I could ask one more, I see the block time has been greatly reduced as we approach the DEX going live, and I see on DevNet it's quite a bit lower than on mainnet. And as advertised, it was sub 1 second finality. I was just wondering, what is the target for the block time for when the DEX goes live for block time? And I'm also curious about the tokenomics. Obviously, more blocks per hour is more Coreum minted per hour for inflationary purposes. So I was just wondering what your targets were, if you could provide that.
Yeah, our target is 1 second per block. So we're working on that on the mainnet as well. We haven't yet reached that. We have that on DevNet and testnet, but on mainnet it's maybe a little bit more challenging. But we're definitely planning to get there by the release of DEX on mainnet. And also regarding your question about the pathfinding, it's not going to be available in the first version of DEX, but we have it on our in our backlog and pipeline, so it will be available with future versions.
Awesome. Well, I don't see another speaker come up, so if I could ask one more, I guess to finish my list. Advertise 0 fees on the DEX. Is that at the onset, for a certain amount of time, or is that the way it's always going to stay? And if so, to me, it presents a big advantage for bridging from XRPL to Coreum just for 0 fees in itself.
Yeah, that's also a great question. Yes, there is obviously no fee for matching. There is just a transaction fee to put in the order. Yeah, as far as whether it's gonna stay like that, I suppose that's the initial plan.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me up. Great space, and I guess the other question, if nobody has asked it yet, is when can we see it go live on mainnet?
Yeah, so right now our target is for the second week of April, but we are still finalizing the timeline. Yeah, so there might be some adjustment, but obviously, keep following our socials and everything will be posted on there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me up, guys. Great space, and look forward to more.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. Let's see, Nico, I wanted to jump in with you again, just to check in and see, is there something I hadn't asked that you wanted to cover specifically or mention specifically, or perhaps, comment on the direction of innovation in the Cosmos ecosystem that you're seeing or hoping to see in the future?
Yes. So aside from IBCB2 and Eureka that I already chatted a little bit about, I want to say that Coreum is a great example of what is happening with RWAs and other mechanisms of similar characteristics in Web3. Like if you see the pattern of why these projects are born in our space and on the Interchain or Cosmos, it's not a coincidence. Coreum is another great example of that. Right now, the technology choices and the liberty to build a very customizable project on top of a chain is really only possible here. And projects like Coreum are stressing that to the bone. Like why you probably guys see Coreum achieve what it achieves, it's because they have the freedom to build on top of the chain itself and configure actually the chain itself however they want. That we were chatting a little bit off this IRL in Denver, but it's the difference of being able to make transactions that just bundle a ton of actions together. Those things make applications run as fast as you guys are making them run, which is tremendously impressive. So it is no coincidence that this type of vertical and RWAs and finance is stepping in to this front of the table using this tech. And I'm super excited to see how Coreum pushes those limits along. Like the work you guys are doing in speed is super impressive. So I'm tapped in, taking notes, excited to see you guys tinker and succeed. So Godspeed for the release.
Very nice. Thanks so much for that, Nico. We really appreciate it. Let's see, just circling back to either Helwan or Artem. Anything else that you specifically wanted to mention that we maybe hadn't covered already?
Let me think. No, I think was a good space. I think maybe one thing that we didn't share about is the why, right? So I think everyone in blockchain want to transact in a decentralized and permissionless manner. And back in the days, order books were only available on centralized exchange, but with that innovation, now we have it on chain directly. The matching is happening on chain, so that means that it's more transparent for all the players involved. So it means the end users that is looking to exchange assets. It's more transparent for the market makers also, and it's also finally enable you to trade in a self-custody manner, right? So all of those big get hacks and everything, we got that covered, right? By having you trading directly with your own assets. Yeah, I think no. Other than that, I think we everything. So yeah, all good on my side.
Hello?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just another speaker with a question. Jay, feel free to share any comments or remarks.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry. I had to step away for business for about 15 minutes. So this question has been asked. I please apologize. But can you explain to us, because I know this is kind of an interesting, maybe even touchy subject, but can you explain to us what the plans are when Solotex does get to the point of launching? How they are going to incorporate both the Coreum and as well as Sologenic as far as the coin and the token, and how that's going to be, what that's going to look like? Any ideas yet?
Hey, yeah, thank you for the question. For the purposes of this space, we will need to focus it specifically on the Coreum DEX. But yeah, absolutely feel free to ask that question. Yeah, it's submitted to. Well, let's see. We'll definitely continue to give more clarity on that one. And
Okay.
yeah, just for the purposes of this space, we want to keep it on the DEX. But yeah, thank you for sharing your
Well,
comment.
well, fair enough. Can I ask a follow-up question then?
Yeah.
What can you, along those same lines, how will the mainnet DEX and Solotex work together?
I think
Or
that's a good question. I think that's more a question for the Sologenic team, but from what I understand, Solotex. So, what is Solotex doing is fractionalization of stocks, right? So, it's taking one stock from a broker and through an omnibus account, being able to propose that stock to the end users, and that stocks is going to be fractionalized. So, from my understanding, the fractionalization is going to happen on the Coreum blockchain because you need smart contract to be able to do that kind of stuff. So, to answer part of your previous question, and again, that is more a question for the Sologenic team, but from my understanding, the Coreum token is going to be used to pay fees, right? To interact with that platform in a decentralized manner. So the same way you will pay fees to interact with the order book or to send tokens from one user to another, you will pay a fee with Coreum. For the Solo token, I'm not sure, to be honest. That is more for a question for the Sologenic team.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. We do have Mike up here as well. Pleasure to have you here, Mike. Thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks, Niles. Appreciate it. And yeah, great question. I mean, right now it's something that we're still building it out. And so once we're ready to make some public announcements about how it's built, we'll be sure to do that. Great question. I know it's a question everybody's asking. There are a lot of moving pieces. We are currently working with the SEC and FINRA in the US to sort of nail down the workflow and the flow of funds. So once we have that nailed down, the public and our community will know. But to Niall's point, for this call, we'll definitely want to focus on the DEX. But great question, and we'll be sure to, keep the community informed as we develop it and understand that, both the Sologenic and the Coreum communities are very curious about how it's going to be built. We're just making sure that we're doing it the right way. So more to come on that. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Just to circle back to you, Artem, for a final time, anything else that you wanted to specifically mention or that we hadn't covered already before we wrap it up?
I guess we sort of covered all of the main points. Yeah, but I'm really excited for this release and upcoming releases on testnet and mainnet. And once again, I wanted to mention that I encourage everyone to join our Discord server for any questions you might have. I'm there to help out. Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, very nice. Just a final circle back to Nico as well. Any final comments or remarks that you'd like to share before we wrap it up here?
Not much. Super excited. Thank you again for the opportunity to join. I think you guys are doing great strides with the tech you're building and with the platform, both this and what we see in Solotex as well. Super inspired as well across the Cosmos ecosystem. It was amazing to meet you guys in person in Denver. Stay tuned. We're pushing the updates for IBC V2 and Eureka. The governance proposals are already on debate in the forum on our end. So things are moving and the bricks are falling into place. We're very excited for the year ahead.
Very exciting. All right. Well, if you haven't followed already, you can you can check out the detailed Medium article on the DEX linked in Coreum's announcement post on X or on LinkedIn. More details have also been published on Coreum's newsletter, so make sure to join that by heading to Coreum.com and scrolling to the bottom of the page and entering your email. And then finally, direct links to the official documentation where you can get started building is available on docs.coreum.dev. And so, yeah, as we mentioned, Artem will have a nice workshop showcasing the step-by-step how to implement the API. So you look for that in the near future. Thank you again to all of our guests and the audience for joining today. It was a real pleasure chatting with you all. Yeah, cheers to the Coreum DEX. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.